November 16th, 2022. Well, at least according to one of the uh, news agencies, I guess this is Newsmax, they've finally called the House for the Republicans. Although I think Fox is one vote, but one seat behind. And I think that CNN is two behind from doing that as I'm recording this. Um, it may well change shortly. But at any rate, it's looking increasingly like the Republicans will take the House. Um, and we're probably looking at something around 221 seats, I think, ultimately, depending on how things shake out and what kind of dirty tricks the Democrats can pull to try to steal something back. The one that seems to be out there is the Colorado 3rd District with Bobbert, or how you pronounce her name, the lady with the pistols. At any rate, apparently she was a major target of the Democrats, and apparently the Democrats turned out in force in a race that probably would have been an easy win, which I think shows you as a strategy. Sometimes trying to really ping the Democrats is not necessarily a good idea because it makes them, they really operate on anger, you have to remember, and that's a key factor. So at any rate, hopefully we'll get it. I think we're ahead by over 1,000 votes, and there's some of the liberals are saying that they can cure enough mail-in ballots. I love that term, cure a ballot. But at any rate, it's actually the envelope actually, but um, and somehow pull out some votes. We don't know yet. I'm still optimistic we'll ultimately be able to win that, but you have to. Our legal people need to be on the ball on this one because that's when they're actually trying to snitch, I think. And there's I think some districts in California that are also in play. A couple of that are left if you use the 218 as serious, or three if you use the 217. So at any rate, and later in this video, I do intend to address briefly the situation with the missile that hit Poland. If you like these videos, please give me a like. It helps with the algorithm to get them out to people. Subscriptions are always great, and any comments are appreciated. Well, so that's kind of our situation right now. It's one thing about this election is I do think there's an underperformance in the House side that which is interesting because we really are ahead by about 4 million votes. I think it is right now in the total popular vote as it comes in. Closed up a little bit from the last time I commented on this, just because I think the California districts finally came in at their leisurely pace. But I believe all the ballots from California need to be in by today, by yesterday, I guess you'd say, and so that would, although it may take another day to count them, we should have that count pretty well done, I think. But on California, you got to be a little careful there, I think. But anyhow, so that's kind of the situation on that. Actually, although I think what we have had is a case where the Republicans got carried away with their expectations, probably because they couldn't believe anybody would support these crazy Democrats. But let's face it, there's a lot of crazy people in this country. So, and on the other hand, although the House races turned out a little low, I mean, it's still we won several seats more than against them, so you can't totally say it's a failure. And the runoff in Georgia gives us a chance to potentially maintain the status quo in the Senate, which is I certainly urge everybody to support that, particularly if you're in Georgia, and otherwise, you can financially contribute to it. Every little bit helps because a lot of money is going to go into that, and even a small contribution probably would help given the scale of the potential donors on both sides. So, of course, it's going to be a kind of a tight situation, I guess, to run this House with such a small majority. I mean, one or two defectors could really mess up a vote, and so it's going to be very difficult. Although the Democrats managed to pull it off during their similar state with a small majority, and were able to pass some really radical legislation during that. Whereas mainly what we need to do is basically just block their radical legislation. So, and I think that's kind of the situation we can hope for. I do think, and it's an interesting question. We finally faced a situation which I kind of hoped we wouldn't face. I thought I was certainly hoping we could get to 51 seats in the Senate at a minimum, and I thought we would. I'm really surprised at how bad we did in some of these races. But I mean, not bad, but I mean, still, a lot of them are pretty close. I mean, look. I guess the master was pretty far off, and I tend to blame a lot of what happened in Arizona, their ongoing situation where they have a very late primary. So they have a lot of battles between the moderates and the far right in Arizona. They battle it out. One or the other wins, and then the other one gets tiffed and doesn't really support the candidate enough, I think. And you know, they may still have some significant mule operations going on out there too. I wouldn't rule that out. But probably the less said on this channel about that, the better, huh? So that's an issue. I always thought that Pennsylvania was going to be a tough one anyhow, because just the nature of that state, and similar issues that might occur in Philadelphia and so forth. So yeah, you have all that. It's there's all, and now of course Trump has announced his run for president, which of course is probably one of the main situations we have here. I guess this comes on a wave of a lot of people, moving toward DeSantis. However, Trump is got a very strong base of support, and I think by announcing first, I think he kind of prevents more defections, perhaps, and that'd be one of his objectives. The other is I think it may put a little bit of a issue in the way of the Democrat DOJ going ahead and prosecuting him. I mean, because it will then look like they're prosecuting him to prevent him from running for president, and that makes it a little bit more politically sensitive. I don't know how much that fits into the calculation, but it's also there, I'm sure. And we'll just have to see how this goes. Who decides to challenge Trump and when, and if they do. I suspect that Christie will join in, because that'll be kind of or other moderate kind of figures will probably. The conservatives may want to hold back just to see how things go, given the fact that there's going to be a lot of blowback against any of them that run against them, obviously, as we've already seen. So that's kind of the situation here. I know I've heard a lot of this discussion that that somehow that we don't do enough early voting or that kind of thing, and I don't know. I mean, I'm nothing against early voting. I mean, it's it's one of those situations that I guess the argument for it would be that if you had early voting, if you early voted, that the possibility that somehow you wouldn't actually vote on election day would be avoided. And yeah, I don't deny that. But on the other hand, a vote's a vote. It doesn't matter if it's on election day or earlier. The thing the Democrats are getting out of this is this whole idea of, quote, curing the ballot or thing, where somebody puts in an inadequately filled out submission, and then they go back and say, hey, you forgot to put your date on this thing. You forgot to sign it right. And of course, the one thing we need to get rid of is signature verification. It's a waste of time. It's too subjective. We need to go to systems like that they've got in Georgia, for instance. And I think is where you put down your ID number from your driver's license, state ID card, or the last 4 digits of your social security number. I mean, that's the way to do it. That way, they'd be looking up this number, and it wouldn't be looking at a subjective thing. It'd be very objective. Is the name the same or isn't it? I mean, that would cut down on a lot of the nonsense that goes on with the so-called, fixing, curing the ballot, not such situation. But there's nothing wrong. I do think in states like California, maybe Arizona or whatever, Colorado, whatever, Washington or Oregon, the states that have these mass mail-out ballots, we do need to get into harvesting a little bit more effectively, I think. Because if we can start winning by harvesting better than they do, they'll probably end that and go back to a more legitimate system. So I think that's kind of one of my thoughts on that. I mean, But, you know, there is another issue that's been raised, is that the gerrymandering of the districts has been one of the reasons that's really held us down in spite of our popular vote win. And that's true to some degree. And it's interesting that a gerrymander backfire in New York actually probably helped us win, along with the very strong governor's uh, competition. Even though we didn't actually win the governor's seat, we won some House seats out of it. So that's kind of my rundown again of where we are right now. We're waiting for the final count to come in, and there's either 3 or 4 districts, or 5, depending on which source you're listening to, left to come in. And I think we're probably heading to 220 or 221. I think, is it possible that one of the ones where the Democrats are leading might go our way in the final analysis? It's possible, but I wouldn't really put a whole lot of faith in that. And finally, I want to say something about the situation with the missile in Poland. I mean, obviously, this is being absurd to suggest this was a deliberate Russian attack on Poland. You wouldn't begin a war against a NATO country and essentially against the alliance by firing one missile into a farm area and accidentally destroying a tractor and killing a couple of farmers. That's absurd. So what we're dealing with here is one of several possibilities. One is a missile simply malfunctioned with its guidance system and ended up in Poland. Another is that it was damaged by Ukrainian anti-aircraft fire and ended up flying out of control and ending up in Poland. Or one of the Ukrainian anti-aircraft missiles launched at it missed and ended up landing in Poland. Probably one of the 3 things the case. It's clearly a tragic accident, but when you're farming that close to a war zone, things like that do spill over. If anybody's silly enough to try to use this to justify starting a war, that is madness in this environment. And I doubt it's going to happen. It will probably be justified to support the aid package that the Biden administration is planning for Ukraine that was already in works. And it'll probably just be used as a way to, close the deal on that, and maybe some warnings and maybe demands for some kind of reparation to the victims' families or something like that. We'll see what ends up happening. But these are the dangers we run perpetuating this war, that something could happen and it could escalate to a real catastrophe. So at any rate, that's kind of my thoughts on that. I will, of course, as always, post this on Rumble, and the addresses of my social media accounts are in the description below. And so we'll wrap this up for now, and until next time.